They told me not to open room 23. As the new night janitor in the basement of St. Cecilia Hospital, I thought it was just hazing. Now I'm praying it's not too late to close that door again. They say hospitals never sleep, but the basement of St. Cecilia's feels like it's been buried alive. You know how some places just hum with energy? Not here. The moment I stepped off the service elevator for my first night shift, I felt like I had gone underwater. Like the walls had swallowed every noise except the ones they wanted me to hear. It started 2 weeks ago when I accepted the janitor position. The pay was better than any other job I'd applied to, and frankly, I needed it. My daughter, Emily, was in and out of the hospital herself, and we couldn't afford my pride. So I took the night shift, midnight to 6 a.m., cleaning the forgotten guts of St. Cecilia's. A heavy-set man in his 60s named Ray trained me. He had permanent bags under his eyes and skin like old parchment. Ray never smiled. Not once. He handed me a floor plan on my first night, pointing to rooms with a thick, stubby finger. Start here and here. You mop, sweep, wipe down counters, and dump trash. Never touch anything with a red tag. Got it. Yeah, sure, I replied. And one more thing, he said, lowering his voice to a whisper. You don't clean room 23. Ever. I half laughed, expecting a punchline. Why? Rats? Mold. His eyes locked onto mine, deadly serious. No jokes, kid. You go near that door, it notices. What notices? But he just shook his head and walked away. My first few shifts went by without much issue. The basement was what you'd expect. Linoleum floors, flickering fluorescent lights, and corridors so silent you could hear your heartbeat echo. I passed a lot of old storage rooms, decommissioned labs, and the occasional abandoned gurney. The place felt like a forgotten limb of the hospital, functional, but useless. Every night, I passed room 23. It was always locked. Heavy steel door, faded number plate. The doorknob was scratched raw like someone had clawed at it. And unlike the rest of the hallway, that door was ice cold. You didn't even have to touch it. You could feel it from a foot away, like cold radiated from inside it. Or maybe something was drawing the warmth out of the air. I did my best to ignore it, but by night 5, things started changing. It began with footsteps. I was cleaning the hallway 2 doors down, headphones in, when I thought I heard someone walking slowly behind me. I turned around, nobody. Pulled the buds out, stood still. Then again, step, step, step. But it wasn't coming from behind me. It was from behind the locked door of room 23. I backed away, heart pounding in my throat. The footsteps stopped. Maybe Ray was screwing with me. Maybe he had a key and wanted to spook the rookie. But when I asked him during shift change, his face drained of color. You heard something? He whispered. Footsteps. He cursed under his breath. You didn't open the door, did you? No, it's still locked. He placed a hand on my shoulder. Don't ever go near it again. But curiosity, as always, is the root of every horror story. Night 8. That was the night the door wasn't locked. I noticed it as soon as I turned the corner. Room 23's door was open, just a crack, but wide enough to show a sliver of darkness inside. No light, no noise, just pure, absolute black. I stood frozen. I didn't touch it. I swear to God I didn't. But something changed in that moment. The hallway behind me no longer felt like a hospital. It felt like a tunnel into something much older. I turned to leave, but the lights above me began to flicker, then die. Pop, pop, pop. Each bulb went out, one by one, racing toward me like dominoes of darkness. I backed away, heart hammering, until I was right next to the door of room 23. That same frigid cold hit my spine. It was so intense my breath came out in a mist. Then, without warning, a sound leaked out from behind the door. A whisper. Not words. Just breath. Like someone or something was inches from the gap. Exhaling. I stumbled backward, nearly slipping on my mop bucket. I ran. Left the bucket, the mop, everything. I slammed the elevator button until it opened and didn't breathe again until I reached the lobby. I told Ray everything the next morning. He sat down, wiped a trembling hand across his face, and said, "I told them sealing it wasn't enough." Sealing what? He looked around to make sure no one was listening. It used to be the trauma room. Back in the 70s. There was a doctor here, Dr. Hargrove. Brilliant but unhinged. Believed in some ancient stuff. Ritual healing. Energy transference. Said he could cure pain by feeding it into something else. My stomach turned. Something else. He built a chamber beneath room 23. No blueprints. No permits. Just old concrete and shadows. He used patients. Ones with no family, no records. Said he was transferring their illness into an empty vessel. But it didn't stay empty. He paused, voice cracking. There were screams. And then silence. The kind of silence that lives in your bones. What happened to him? They sealed the room. He disappeared. But sometimes the room doesn't stay shut. Ray stood up and stared at me, eyes red-rimmed. It feeds on attention, fear, curiosity. You see it, hear it, feel it. It starts to wake up. That's why we don't talk about it. That's why we don't clean it. I didn't want to return, but I needed the money. Emily's treatments were mounting, and guilt clawed me harder than any ghost could. So I came back, armed with salt in my pockets and every prayer I could remember. This time, room 23 wasn't just a jar. It was wide open. There was no cold anymore. No footsteps. Just darkness. Still and waiting. And my mop bucket was gone. Only one thing sat in the middle of the room now. A hospital bracelet. My name on it. I never made that bracelet. Hands trembling. I took a picture and backed away slowly. That was the night I told the head supervisor I wanted transfer. He laughed it off until I showed him the photo. He went pale. "There is no room 23, he said. That hallway was sealed 3 years ago." He showed me a newer floor plan. Room 22, then room 24. "Check the surveillance footage," I told him, voice shaking. He did. There was nothing there. Just me, standing alone in a dead hallway, talking to a wall. But I know what I saw. I know that door opened. I know it whispered. And I know my daughter woke up the next morning screaming, because she said she dreamed of being dragged into a dark room with my voice calling to her from inside. Now, every night, I see shadows just outside my windows. I hear whispers behind doors that should be locked. And sometimes I find water, hospital-grade mop water, pooling under my bed. They say the basement is sealed. They say room 23 doesn't exist. But something followed me home, and it wants to finish cleaning. If you think horror stays behind at your job, you're wrong. Especially when your job involves opening doors that were meant to stay sealed. I left St. Cecilia's hospital a week ago. I never looked back, but it didn't matter. You see, I didn't leave room 23. It left with me. The nightmares started first. The kind you don't wake up from in a cold sweat because you're not even sure you were dreaming. In one, I was standing in front of that open door again. Room 23, and my daughter, Emily, was behind me, tugging at my shirt, whispering, "Daddy, there's someone inside. And it sounds like you." In another, I was mopping a hospital hallway that stretched forever. Each time I passed a door, it would creak open just slightly more than the last. At the very end was room 23, but this time the door was wide open, and inside was me, or something that looked like me, hunched over and whispering in a voice like crushed glass. "Finish what you started." I woke up to the sound of mop water sloshing, except there was no mop, no bucket, just wet footprints on the hardwood floor leading from the front door to my daughter's bedroom. I'd taken the week off after quitting. I told myself I needed rest, that the fear would pass, that maybe Ray had been right. Maybe I'd given room 23 attention, and now my mind was feeding off it, until things started happening in Emily's room. She was already a light sleeper, but now she was waking up screaming every single night. Said she saw a man with no eyes sitting in the corner of her room, wearing my work uniform. I try to be rational. Maybe she saw a shadow. Maybe the stress of my job had affected her more than I realized. Maybe. Then I found her closet door wide open one morning, and drawn on the inside wall in black crayon were the numbers 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3 scrawled over and over like a ritual chant. She doesn't even own black crayons, and she doesn't know that number. I called Ray. He didn't pick up. I tried again and again until finally a woman answered. She sounded tired. "Ray passed away," she said. "2 days ago. Massive heart attack." I froze, but I saw him last week. He hadn't been working for a while. Said something in the hospital was watching him again. I felt like my lungs had collapsed. Whatever had been lurking in room 23, whatever he'd warned me about, it finally took him. And now it had me. And worse, it had found Emily. I tried talking to the hospital again. They stonewalled me, claimed they had no record of room 23. I even brought the photo of the hospital bracelet. The supervisor looked me dead in the eye and said, "There's no name tag with that number." In fact, he turned the screen to show the logbook. "We don't even use room 23 anymore. It's just concrete behind that wall." But that wasn't true, because later that night, Emily went missing. The window in her room was still locked from the inside. Her closet door was ajar, and written on her bedsheet in something that looked like muddy footprints, but darker, stickier, was the number 23. No signs of forced entry. No noise. I'd just gone to the kitchen to make her some warm milk. I was gone 5 minutes. When I came back, her bed was empty, but the air in the room was freezing. And in that stillness, I swear I heard her giggling from inside the closet. But when I opened it, there was nothing there, just my old janitor badge resting on the carpet. And behind the coat rack, a door I'd never seen before. Not a closet panel, not drywall. A metal door. Steel. Just like room 23. I stood there, staring at the impossible. My legs wouldn't move. My heart was trying to beat its way out of my chest. It made no sense, but that's how this thing works. It doesn't obey physics. It rewrites them. I touched the knob. Ice cold. I pulled it open. No hinges creaked. No dramatic wind howled. It simply opened into darkness. And at the very back, just barely visible, was Emily, sitting on the floor, humming to herself. I screamed her name and rushed in. But as soon as I crossed the threshold, everything changed. The hallway behind me was gone. The door was gone. My home gone. I was back in a hospital basement. But this version of it, it wasn't like before. The walls bled. Not metaphorically, actually bled. Thick, black liquid oozed from the tiles like veins had ruptured. The lights above were flickering, not white, but a deep, pulsing red like a heartbeat echoing through metal. The floor was wet, slippery, mop water, and I could hear it again, that sound, the one I tried to forget, the breath behind the door. It wasn't just in my ears anymore. It was in my lungs, my bones. It was everywhere. Emily, I shouted. Her humming stopped. Daddy, she whispered. Yes, I'm here. Her voice echoed strangely, like it came from below me, not ahead. I ran forward. My feet splashed through the dark water, and every step echoed like I was stomping through a graveyard of whispers. Shapes slithered beneath the surface. Long, jointed fingers, or were they tentacles? Then the hallway split, forked left and right. On the left wall, room 23. On the right wall, room 23. Both doors identical, both ice cold. Daddy, Emily called again, but now her voice came from both directions. The whisper behind me grew louder, harsher, wet. Choose. That voice, it was mine, but hollow, distorted, as if filtered through death. I didn't know what to do. If I chose wrong, what if I lost her forever? I closed my eyes and focused on her heartbeat, that gentle rhythm I used to listen to when she napped on my chest. And then I heard it, faint, left side. I ran. I threw the left room 23 door open, expecting darkness. But I didn't find a void. I found my home again. Emily was on the floor of her closet, crying, shaking. I grabbed her and pulled her into my arms. I've got you. You're safe now. But as we ran, as I kicked the closet door shut behind me, I saw it. A pair of my own eyes, staring back at me through the gap, smiling. That was 3 days ago. I've sealed the closet, boarded it, nailed it shut. But every night, Emily still hears it breathing. She says he talks to her. She says he wants me to come back. Sometimes, when I'm alone, I catch glimpses in the mirror. My reflection won't match me exactly. Its mouth moves on its own. Its eyes look tired, older, wrong. And in the wet footprints that appear near our hallway at 3:23 a.m., I swear I see mop lines. I've been researching everything I can. There are old records of room 23, hidden deep in the hospital's archives. Before it was sealed, it was used for end-of-life patients. People the hospital wanted forgotten. Many died under mysterious circumstances. Some staff said the room began to change the longer it stayed open. Mirrors cracked, lights shorted, time slipped. One nurse reported hearing a child laughing behind the walls a full month after the last patient died. She quit the next day. The following night, she vanished. Her shoes were found in front of room 23's door, but no one ever found her. Ray knew. He'd seen it all before. That's why he warned me. That's why he never went near it. But I did. I looked inside. I heard it. And now it's looking back. I don't know how much longer I can keep it out. Every day, the door creaks louder. My dreams grow darker. I've nailed the closet shut 3 times now. But the boards rot overnight. Black mold creeps out from underneath. Emily's drawings have changed, too. She draws 2 daddies. One smiling, one not, one clean, one holding a mop. If anyone hears this, if you ever work in a hospital and someone tells you not to clean a certain room, listen to them. Don't open it. Don't even touch it. Because once you let it notice you, it never stops watching. And it always finds a way in. I haven't slept in 2 days. Every time I close my eyes, I see room 23. Not the real one, but a twisted version built from everything I've ever feared. The walls pulse like flesh. The floor sinks like a lung ready to inhale. And always, he's there. The man with no eyes. Emily calls him that now. She says he stands in the dark parts of the room and whispers through the mop water. Last night, she drew him again, his head shaped like mine, but his face smooth and pale. No mouth, no eyes, just skin stretched tight like wax. She said, "That's the daddy who lives in the wall." I told her to stop. I told myself to stop. But the knocks keep coming. Always at 3:23 a.m. 3 knocks from inside the closet. I called the contractor yesterday. Told him I had a mold problem. He showed up mid-afternoon, looked at the closet, and frowned. I can seal it shut, he said, but this door wasn't part of the original layout. It's like someone added it later. I didn't argue. Just paid him double and watched him reinforce it with concrete sealant and steel brackets. 5 hours of labor, and he looked exhausted when it was done. That night, I finally slept, but not for long. At exactly 3:23 a.m., I woke up choking on mop water. That's not a metaphor. I mean, I actually coughed up fluid. Salty, chemical slick. It poured out of my mouth and onto the bed like I drowned in my sleep. Emily was gone. Again, the closet door was still shut, but a slow stream of that same murky water leaked from underneath the concrete, trailing along the floor in winding rivulets that spelled out one word: cleanse. I screamed her name and dropped to my knees, pounding on the concrete. No answer. I didn't think. I just acted. I tore the brackets, cut my hands on the steel, slammed my fists into the wall until blood mixed with mop water. And when it finally cracked, when the last bracket broke off and the concrete groaned open like it had been holding its breath for too long, I saw it again. Room 23. Exactly as I remembered it. Only this time, it wasn't empty. There were bodies, lining the walls, hanging like coats, suspended in the air, unmoving, eyeless. Some wore hospital gowns, others janitor uniforms. One was wearing my exact outfit, ID badge and all, but its skin was paper thin and translucent, veins pulsing underneath like it was still alive. In the center stood the mop, old, rotting, drenched in that same gray-black water. Its fibers curled like burnt hair. Emily was crouched behind it, covering her ears. I stepped forward, water up to my ankles now, and the bodies turned. Not their heads, their entire bodies. Like marionettes on invisible strings, they twisted as one and faced me, arms limp, mouths open. From their throats came a gurgling voice that echoed, as if through a tunnel filled with bile. Finish cleaning, or we take her. I rushed to her, lifted her in my arms, and ran. But the room didn't end. The door vanished behind me. No walls, just corridors filled with flickering red lights and squelching tile. And always the mop. It kept reappearing, on the floor, at my feet, in my hands, like the room wouldn't let me leave unless I used it. Then I heard my own voice whisper in my ear, "Cleanse it, or she stays." I didn't know what to do. I didn't trust it. I didn't trust the voice, the bodies, the room. But I looked at Emily, trembling, wide-eyed, and I realized something. The mop water wasn't killing her. It was feeding on me. I took the mop, dragged it across the floor. The room sighed. The lights flickered, and for a moment, the corridor ahead became visible again. My home. Her bedroom. I pushed forward, mopping, cleaning the same floor that had tried to drown me. Every inch soaked the fibers with something foul, something alive. But it worked. The doorway opened again. I leapt through it with Emily in my arms, and the mop snapped in half behind me like something had bitten it. We landed in her room. The light was on, her bed untouched, but the closet door was gone, sealed shut again, this time from the other side. We left that morning, packed what we could, took the car and drove west. Motel after motel, never staying longer than one night. But the water followed. We found wet footprints in the shower of one motel. No one had used it. A handprint smeared across the TV screen. A whisper behind the curtain in the middle of the night. We missed a spot. I tried burning the uniform. I watched it curl and blacken in a motel parking lot, turning to ash. But the next morning, it was folded neatly on the passenger seat. And on the chest pocket, the patch didn't read St. Cecilia's janitorial anymore. It read, Room 23 staff. Emily's not the same. She barely speaks now, just stares out the window, draws more of the man with no eyes. Last night, she finally said something. He wants you to mop the sky next, she whispered. He says it's dirty up there. That's why the stars don't blink anymore. I asked her what she meant. She said, that's where the other you lives now. The daddy with no eyes. I cried in the bathroom for an hour. I called the hospital one last time. Pretended to be a relative of a former employee. Asked about Dr. Hargrove. The man Ray said built room 23. The voice on the line went silent. Then a quiet reply. He was never on record. What do you mean? I mean, his name only exists on one document. An unofficial one. A hand-scribbled note. No employee file. No tax ID. It's like he was a ghost. I asked what the note said. She hesitated. Then read it aloud. Cleanse the pain. Cleanse the soul. Room 23 takes the stain. Room 23 makes it whole. That was yesterday. Tonight, something new happened. We were at a roadside diner. I went to the restroom. When I came back, Emily was gone again. I screamed. I ran outside. There was mop water on the diner floor. I followed it behind the building. And there, next to the dumpsters, was a steel door. A fresh one. Room 23. I opened it without thinking. Inside wasn't the hospital basement this time. It was the diner kitchen, but darker, twisted. Knives floated in the air like surgical tools. The grills hissed with blood. The walk-in freezer whispered in a dozen tongues. And hanging from the meat hooks were copies of me. Different versions. Fatter, older, eyeless, silent. Emily sat at the counter, legs swinging, sipping chocolate milk. Next to her was the man with no eyes. He turned to me, and for the first time, he spoke. You made the mess. You mop it up. Then I understood. It's not about the hospital. It never was. Room 23 isn't a place. It's a punishment. For guilt. For secrets. For grief. It latches onto people who try to bury their sins. Who think a mop and a paycheck will clean the past. But you can't clean grief. You just spread it around. And when it soaks in deep enough, Room 23 appears. To remind you. To trap you. To consume you. I grabbed Emily. The man with no eyes didn't stop me. He just whispered again. We'll be back tomorrow. There's always more to clean. Now we're driving again. Nowhere to go. No more safe places. Every time I blink, I see wet footprints on the dashboard. Every time I close my eyes, I hear the whisper. Every time I check the back seat, I see a mop, and it's waiting. We're out of money. We're out of gas. We're out of time. Emily hasn't spoken in 48 hours. She just hums to herself now. A soft, eerie tune she never learned. One that matches the rhythmic dripping of mop water that appears under every door we close. Last night, I woke up in the driver's seat of our stalled car with her gone again. The back seat door was open, and in the dirt beside the car, wet footprints. One large, one small, heading toward an old maintenance tunnel that hadn't been there when we parked. A steel door stood at its mouth, half open. It bore no markings, no address, no warnings, but I didn't need them. I already knew what it was. Room 23 had found us again. I didn't hesitate this time. I stepped inside and was swallowed by darkness, so thick it felt like velvet pressed against my face. The tunnel stretched endlessly in both directions. Walls made of mismatched brick and surgical tile. The smell of bleach and blood clung to every surface. and there were mirrors lining the walls. Hundreds of them, each one reflecting a version of me. Some bloodied, some missing limbs, some with glowing eyes, some holding mops like weapons, some just staring. As I moved past them, they began to whisper, not in sync. Each one had its own voice, its own fear. You didn't stop it in time. You let her go. You brought her here. You are the stain. I screamed and shattered one of the mirrors with my fist. The others laughed. You can't clean glass with guilt. I found Emily at the center of the tunnel. She was sitting cross-legged beneath a spotlight that didn't come from anywhere, smiling at something I couldn't see. I approached cautiously, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she said, "He says you need to remember that you left something behind." "Who?" I asked, but I knew. She lifted her hand and pointed behind me. I turned, and he was there, the man with no eyes. Only, this time, he wasn't featureless. This time, he looked exactly like me. He wore my face, my uniform, even the tiny tear in the hem of my right sleeve. But his expression was twisted with something impossible. Grief and delight fused into one grotesque smile. He held the same mop, but its handle was bone, its head drenched in red. "You remember now?" he asked. And suddenly I did. I remember the night 5 years ago, when Emily had her first seizure, when I drove too fast to the hospital, when the doctor said they'd need weeks of treatment, when I realized I couldn't afford it. Not then, not ever. That was the night the hospital offered me a special job. Night shift, basement janitor, triple pay, no questions, just one rule: never clean room 23. I remembered opening it, not out of curiosity, but desperation. They told me no one went in. No one would notice if I slipped a few pills, a few supplies, a few syringes, just enough to sell on the side. Just enough to pay for her treatment, just enough to survive. But every night I broke that seal. Every night I entered room 23, I felt it getting colder, angrier, hungrier. And then came the night it spoke. The first time I heard the whisper, "You cleaned the surface, but what about the stain inside?" That's when I saw him for the first time. Myself, eyeless, mopping up the mess I'd made. Back in the tunnel, the other me grinned wider. Room 23 doesn't punish accidents. It punishes secrets. He stepped closer. You fed it guilt, pain, shame, and now it's full. I stepped in front of Emily, shielding her. "You can't have her." "I don't want her," he replied. "You do. That's the problem." His hands lifted slowly, and the mirrors on the walls began to crack. Each one revealed something new. One showed my wife before she died. Another, my daughter, never sick at all. A life I could have had if I'd been better, stronger, cleaner. "Room 23 is made of could-have beans," he said. "You made your mess. Now mop it." The floor collapsed beneath us. Suddenly, we were falling through a never-ending shaft lined with hospital lights and broken intercom speakers, all chanting, "Cleanse it, cleanse it, cleanse it." We landed hard, back in the hospital basement. But it wasn't St. Cecilia's anymore. It was deeper, older, like we were under every hospital, a foundational rot that had existed since medicine was born. Room 23 stood at the far end. Only now it pulsed like a living heart. Emily clutched my arm. "Don't go back in." I looked down at her, and something in her eyes snapped me back into focus. She wasn't just scared. She was changing. Pale, slower to blink. Like the room's influence had started to infect her, even outside its walls. This thing wasn't after me anymore. It was preparing her to replace me. I had one chance. I picked up the mop, and I walked into room 23 willingly. Not to escape, not to rescue, but to finish what I started. Inside, the room had become a mosaic of memories. Every lie I told, every dollar I stole, every time I said, I'm doing this for her, while ignoring the darkness creeping into my skin. The man with no eyes waited, mop in hand. Together, he asked. I nodded, and we began to clean. It wasn't like before. Every swipe of the mop didn't remove the stain. It revealed it. Faces, names, pain. I saw every patient that died while I slept above them. Every soul that whispered through the vents. Every ounce of suffering soaked into the tile. And I wept. I said their names. I apologized. And for the first time, room 23 grew quiet. Then the man with no eyes turned to me. You're done. He vanished. So did the mop. And the room collapsed. I woke up in the hospital. The real one. Bright lights overhead. Emily asleep beside me in a chair. A nurse walked in and smiled. You're lucky. Someone found you both passed out in a maintenance tunnel a mile from the freeway. Dehydrated but alive. I asked her if this was St. Cecilia's. She frowned. That place burned down 2 nights ago. I didn't respond. Didn't tell her about the room, or the mop, or the other me, because for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt clean. That night, as I tucked Emily into bed, she whispered, Is it over? I smiled. Yes. But then she asked, Why do your eyes look different now? Why do your eyes look different now? That's what Emily asked me the night we came home from the hospital. She was safe. She was breathing. Her cheeks had color again, but something in her voice wasn't quite right, like she was speaking through a crack in a world I couldn't see. I looked at myself in the mirror after I tucked her in. She was right. My eyes were darker, not just tired, deeper, like they didn't end behind the sockets. Like if you stared long enough, you might see room 23 staring back. It's been a week since we left the hospital. Emily's sleeping again, eating, laughing even. For the first time in years, she feels like a child again. Not the one I was always fighting to save, but the one I thought I'd lost to sickness, poverty, and guilt. But I know what this is. A calm before the relapse. Because room 23 doesn't let go. I've begun seeing him again. The man with no eyes. Not in mirrors anymore, but in glass surfaces. In puddles. In the black reflection of my coffee. Sometimes, I see him walking just a few paces behind me in store windows. And sometimes, when I'm dreaming, I'm not me anymore. I'm him, mopping the same tile over and over, smearing the stain into a wider circle. Last night, I woke up to find Emily sitting on the kitchen floor, drawing again. Only this time, she wasn't using crayons. She was using mop water. I grabbed her gently, pulled her into my lap. Why, sweetheart? Why are you doing this? She looked up, tears on her cheeks. Because he said I have to help. He said the stain came with you, that it lives in the place between your heartbeats now. She clutched her tiny fists together and whispered, He said if we don't finish cleaning, you'll disappear forever. Like the other daddies. I knew what had to be done. Room 23 was no longer in the hospital. It was inside me, and the longer I waited, the more it spread. The water, the whispers, the infection. If I didn't stop it now, Emily would be next. And worse, she'd inherit my mop. I drove back to the ruins of St. Cecilia's. There was nothing left but blackened beams and the faint smell of antiseptic soaked into the ash. But as I stepped through the rubble, I felt it again, that cold, impossibly cold presence. And below the wreckage, half buried in the soot, I found it. The steel door. No handle. No hinges. Just standing upright, like it didn't need permission to exist. I didn't have a key, but I didn't need one. It wanted me back. I stepped through, and the world inverted. No sound, no light, just a wet, breathless silence that wrapped around me like plastic. I was back inside room 23, but this time there were no illusions. No haunted hospital, no memory tricks, just one long hallway, endless. Every 10 feet, another version of me stood holding a mop. Some were weeping, some were chanting, some were frozen in place like mannequins. But all of them had one thing in common. They were stuck. Then I saw him again. The final version. The source. The first me who ever broke the rules. He sat at the end of the hall on a broken gurney, hands resting on a blood-stained bucket. His face was hollowed, eyes gone, skin pulled tight like parchment soaked in bleach. "You think guilt ends when you say sorry?" he rasped. "You think a few tears mopped the stain away?" I did what I had to, I said, stepping forward. "To save her," he laughed. "No, you did it to save yourself. And now she's marked." I clenched my fists. "Then let me end it. Let her go. Let all of them go. You want to finish the job?" I nodded. Then mop. The mop appeared in my hand. Familiar. Heavier. Alive. I dropped to my knees and began to clean. But this time, I didn't just wipe the tile. I remembered every face I'd forgotten. Every corner I cut. Every sin I buried under bleach and overtime. I whisper their names, their pain, and with each pass of the mop, the hallways shortened. One by one, the other me-s disappeared, until only he remained, the original stain. He stood and walked to me, mop in hand. Together, we cleaned the last tile. The floor glowed, the room cracked. Light poured in, real light. The kind I hadn't seen since Emily was born, and he smiled, not cruelly this time, but like a father proud of his son. "You did it," he whispered. "You made it right." Then he dropped the mop and vanished. I woke up in my car, parked outside our house. The sunrise was pale and quiet. Emily was asleep in the back seat, wrapped in a blanket. She looked peaceful. She was clean. Inside the house, everything was dry. No mop water, no whispers, no steel doors, no footprints. But in the kitchen, on the table, sat a folded note. In my handwriting, it read, "Some stains aren't meant to be cleaned, only carried." I buried the mop in the woods behind our house. Dug 6 feet deep. No ceremony, just dirt and silence. And as I finished, I looked up and whispered, "I'm sorry." The wind answered, "That was 3 months ago." Emily's laughing again. The house is quiet. I've taken a job as a school custodian. Day shift. I still clean floors, but they don't talk to me anymore. And every time I dump a bucket of dirty water, I say their names. All of them, just in case. But sometimes, just before I drift to sleep, I hear a whisper in the walls. "Missed a spot.